Hi there, Alison. Well, this is certainly an incredible story of survival. Emmanuel Boateng was born premature at just 27 weeks here in London in the United Kingdom. After battling through that, he was then diagnosed with both sepsis and COVID-19. Now, he was given an experimental treatment. Thankfully, he has now made a full recovery, and I was able to meet both baby Emmanuel and his mother, Evelyn, here in London, who says her son's recovery is nothing short of a miracle. Take a watch. Britain's youngest COVID-19 survivor, baby Emmanuel, finally allowed home after a 47-day battle for his life. His mother, Evelyn, forever thankful to the doctors and nurses at King's College Hospital in London.
I think I was the happiest person on earth that day.
Elation after the kind of agony no parent wants to endure. Emmanuel was born 3 months premature. After surviving that, nurses then had to break the news to Evelyn that her tiny son had another battle on his hands: sepsis and COVID-19.
Seeing many of them coming, I was like, what's going on? And then one of them walked to me, and then she was like, Mom, I'm sorry. Within the next 24 hours, we might lose baby Emmanuel. And I'm like, why? Why? So I pray a bit, and then I cry. It was just crying and crying and crying.
The hardest moment of her life, made harder still by the fact she had to leave Emmanuel and self-isolate for 14 days.
And I went to stand by him, and I was like, Emmanuel, Mom is leaving. You're going to be alone, but we'll always be here with you in spirit. And then I waved him and then prayed, and then I left the room.
Evelyn was told by doctors here at King's College Hospital in London to prepare for the worst on 3 separate occasions, and with hope fading, those doctors turned to a drug called remdesivir, tested unsuccessfully for Ebola patients, using it on baby Emmanuel on compassionate grounds. At a time when trials of the drug for COVID patients are still ongoing, it was a risk.
It was a tricky decision to make because this is the first time we used it. We were not aware of side effects at such a young age and whether it will help or not. I think it may have helped, but I'm not convinced from the adult data, research data, which has been published, that this is the magic drug.
And even if doctors don't know whether remdesivir worked, for Emmanuel's family, his recovery was still a stroke of magic.
The nurses were like, Mom, you can sit down. Do you want to give him a... I said, no. I just want to look at the boy lying down because it's a miracle.
A relief for the whole family, including Morris, keeping a close eye on his younger brother, now Britain's youngest COVID-19 survivor. And, you know, just to emphasise how tiny baby Emmanuel was when he went through all of this, the day that he left the hospital fully recovered to that round of applause was, in fact, Emmanuel's original due date, the day that he was meant to be born. So such an incredible, such an eventful life so far.
In a matter of months, New York's gone from early epicenter to budding success story.
We didn't flatten the curve, we bent the curve.
But reviving the pulse of the city will depend on the heart of it all, the subway. Its 5.6 million daily riders fell more than 90% during the pandemic's peak.
How much does New York City's reopening depend on your ability to convince people that they can and should take the subway?
To a substantial extent. We're acutely aware of the responsibility we've got to millions of people and to the New York and regional economy.
We caught up with commuters on the 7 train. The Corona station in Queens was ironically once a hotspot for the coronavirus, but now
Long lines developing to get their Metro cards. There are touchless payment options here and some markers to show social distancing, but pretty big crowd here.
Some commuters say they're taking precautions.
Just follow the rules. No, just wear gloves, masks, social distance.
Others filled with fear.
I'm headed to go get cancer treatment.
Is the subway the only way you can go get your treatment?
Yes.
Considering you're sick, do you feel comfortable riding the subway?
Not whatsoever. I don't feel comfortable on the train. There's no social distance whatsoever. They don't wear masks half of the time.
What are you doing to protect yourself?
Wearing this, keep my gloves on, as much as I can sometimes. That's it.
So that's a really tough balance because you need the subway to get your treatment. At the same time, you're risking your health getting on the train.
Yeah. We said we actually liked the subway, and the whole city was nice when it was somewhat on a lockdown. Now it's like it's coming back. No one cares no more.
Another rider with reservations on the 7 train, Fabiola Bhutan. A mom of 2, she takes the subway to get to her restaurant job in Harlem.
Are you worried about what might happen as more people get back on?
I have kids, and I'm worried about them. I don't want to be sick.
All right, great.
Fabiola's boss is Chef Marcus Samuelson. For him, the subway is everything.
For me, it really came down to I want to be close to the subway, and the 2 and the 3 is one of the busiest subway in New York City.
Samuelson is preparing to open up outdoor seating, but first, his employees and customers need to feel comfortable getting there.
We had a conversation about anyone who didn't feel comfortable coming to work. We get it, so it was optional.
The MTA has made changes to make trains and stations safer, closing down trains from 1 to 5 a.m. for disinfecting, making hand sanitizer and masks freely available.
Now, to keep yourself safe, experts recommend finding a less crowded part of the platform, maybe even waiting for a less crowded train car, unthinkable to many New Yorkers. And once you're actually on the train, the recommendation is try not to touch many surfaces. A little bit difficult on a moving train. Can you really enforce social distancing, especially during those peak ridership hours?
And we've been very candid with our riders. The standard is 6 feet. If you're closer, you got to wear a mask. We're not promising our customers social distance on subways as they get crowded.
2 weeks into New York's reopening, ridership is up to around 1 million a day. For many commuters, this new normal is nerve-wracking but necessary.
And Dasha joins me now from Times Square in New York City. Dasha, how else does the MTA plan to keep its riders safe?
Hey, Allison. Well, on top of what you saw in the piece, the MTA is increasing train service, so more trains coming more often, trying to disperse those crowds. They're also talking to businesses, trying to get them to stagger hours for their employees so that people don't get really packed in during those peak ridership hours, spreading rush hour out over more of the day. And, of course, asking commuters themselves to do what they can to protect themselves. So it really sounds like it's going to be an effort on the part of city officials, businesses and commuters themselves to make the subway safer.
Dasha, as we mentioned, the city now in phase 2 of its reopening that started today. What is part of phase 2?
Well, the reason the subway is even more important now than ever is because of all the businesses that are finally getting to open their doors. Places like retail stores can now welcome some shoppers inside with limited capacity. Restaurants can open up outdoor seating. Hair salons and barbershops can welcome customers as well. Even offices can begin to open up, although it does sound like a lot of offices are going to continue at least some form of remote work for the foreseeable future. But Allison, I want to show you where I am right now. I'm in the heart of Times Square, and I just want to have my camera pan around here to 42nd Street. I mean, take a look. This is not anything like pre-pandemic New York, but it's also not quite that eerie, empty, almost post-apocalyptic feeling you got when you walked through here even just a few weeks ago. There are some signs of life, people riding bikes, walking with their families, headed to work. A little bit of we're seeing a bit of a new normal come back in New York here.
Yeah, Dasha, I know we've said this before today, but it sort of looks like what a Sunday in New York is like in the summer when people aren't exactly around, but not as quiet as it has been. Nice to see some folks back out and about again, and wonderful to see you as always.
Thanks so much, Allison.
Yeah, Allison, we just heard from the World Health Organization in a pretty sweeping press conference, and they really were hitting on some very delicate points. Now, this comes one day after the highest single-day increase in the number of coronavirus cases worldwide. Now, that would be troubling in and of itself, 189,000 new cases in one single day. But it also comes just as many major outbreak epicenters are now starting to very slowly, very cautiously lift their lockdowns. Places like New York City and other places here in Europe, especially here in London, where they're talking about possibly lifting the lockdown as early as next week or even in the next couple of weeks. Now, that's troubling for World Health Organization leaders. They didn't go so far as to say, don't lift these lockdowns, but they urged countries, especially in the developed West, like in North America and here in Europe, to be very, very cautious and to make sure that these countries and their governments are on top of the need for the requirement that could come up a second wave of outbreaks. And there were troubling signs in Germany, in South Korea, and several other places that a second wave could be coming very quickly on the heels of that first wave. But the World Health Organization was drawing particular attention to what's been going on in the developing world, especially in South America. It was South America that carried the bulk of those new cases that we saw with that surge yesterday. And they also tamped down any rumors or any ideas that the virus was evolving to become less deadly. They were addressing reports that came out of northern Italy that said that some of those cases seen by doctors in northern Italy were less severe. They said this disease has shown no signs of changing. It's as lethal as ever, and everybody, looking at the numbers, needs to be much more careful.